Hello again. I'm going to take a further look at this situation, in particular Adam Lloyd's email, Officer 1812 of Northumbria Police. Um, if you look at the response, I've his response I pasted into previous video. He he does something quite interesting because bearing in mind these devices have been out of some of which I don't own. He knows that. He's made me fully aware of that. Um, Out of my possession for almost for 10 days essentially. Um, Look where he tries to cover himself here. Where he's put, did you provide the passwords? He's the investigative officer, so the investigating officer, but I think it's very obvious that he's not acting autonomously. He's acting for someone above, probably at the behest of Rachel Hudson, who's become very, very unsettled at the corruption that we found. So, as the investigating officer, he will have no records whatsoever of ever asking for those passwords. Uh, so isn't that weird? And the other weird thing is, um, from what we can see, these devices have already been hacked, and I cannot access. And he will know this, and certainly the people he's following orders from will know this. That I can't access any of my accounts since they stole my laptops and devices. So I can't access personal accounts, and one of them will include, the other YouTube channel, for instance. Others will be emails, and other utilities, effectively. So I believe, effectively, and from what we've seen from other analysis, is these have already been breached. But in terms of perpetrating this, effectively psychological abuse, what they're trying to do is they know this placing me under enormous stress and putting massive anxiety on me. So they're trying to cost me my livelihood, and they're trying to put me into such a position that I've become so desperate that I take drastic measures. So that's essentially the psychological abuse that they're trying to force on me. I'm failing that. If I survive, they'll probably try to imprison me and so on and so forth. So I'm not around for 2027. Now, if you look at um, the other aspect, this pretext of an allegation that so spray painted somebody's car. There is absolutely nothing they put forward. I've not been able to defend myself properly against his allegations. I've not been able to take away the evidence, which is some photographs in my communications with Rachel Hudson by the court. Don't have her personal email, don't know where she lives, don't need to, don't know what car she drives, don't need to. Yeah, I have said that I believe that she has behaved in a corrupt and racist way, and I do. And we'll go into that because my further videos are going to be showing you how a case works and how this corruption comes into play. This sort of profit motive in the care system and long-term care orders and the emotional sterilisation of children, which we've witnessed in a heartbreaking way for our younger daughter, where she was proud, tremendously proud of her Polish heritage, and they've just erased it. Cultural genocide. So almost effectively like what the BBC have accused. And I know the BBC isn't necessarily regarded as a trusted source, and I wrote that in Lost to the Races. I was proven right with the US election. Um, what they've accused when they accuse the Chinese of sterilizing or erasing Uyghur culture and effectively engineer them into Han citizens, Han Chinese. That's an allegation, of course, but that's essentially what's happened to our daughter. And you also got to look at the timeline of what this happened, because strangely enough, this raid was executed on a day that we wouldn't ordinarily be at home, which is very odd. Either of us, and he arrived with forcing his way into the property, eventually going on to assault me in the back of the car, as I tried to press him on what he was doing in terms of firing questions at him, which he was very sloppy and gave away quite a lot about the spray paint, and then YouTube videos, initially emails, and he was leaking things as he was under pressure. So I was firing questions at him to try to unsettle him and find out what effectively this was about, because they were giving very inconsistent messages. So, and I'd taken the dog for a walk, and I said there was something very odd around the shopping centre near where I live. Somebody seemed to be watching me, and then when I passed, they seemed to act. And I thought it was odd, but I continued home, took the dog up to the house, and eventually went upstairs and returned to my computer, knocked on the door, and there he was. So I really do believe my devices were being surveilled before, because there's too many coincidences in it. Let's also look at the timing aspects. So let's look at the financial aspects. So we have a budget. So we had a budget coming up, and I've shown a lot of material and posted a lot of material which fundamentally shows that the financial system is structured in a regulated, structured in a way where it subordinates the welfare of the victims of financial scandals to the reputation of the FCA. I think that's very, very hard to dispute now. And you can sort of see that with, I started to raise these questions. If you look at the allegations the FCA make against John, they allege that a fraud occurred from 2014 to 2023. So up until the 2023 aspect, it was almost the entire life of the FCA. So it was an embodiment, if proven, of the failure of the system they regulate. Yeah, and you see examples also with Barclays, for instance. They fined Barclays for saying that essentially they failed to check the FCA register. And I noted this in the book Lost to Erasers, that Welltec didn't have client money permissions. But similarly, when I made my disclosures to them, one of the options I gave them was merely going to Newcastle and saying, look, hey, what are your assets under management and where are they? Because I'd given them a glaring example via cut and pasting something from the website, and based on my experience, that Vertum Asset Management was nowhere near running what they claimed to. And so it was a false representation to anyone who wished to look at the website and take comfort in it. So you really do have a situation of the failed beating the failed. And that just doesn't sit well with a budget that's trying to push growth through the financial services sector and encourage people to invest more in the stock market and take more risk. So it's very odd timing, isn't it? And also, if you look at the videos I posted on the other channel that I've been frozen out of, you will see that I've spoken of this coordinated coercion. And I spoken about a judge on notice that we were going to reveal, and obviously have now, which is bizarre because we could have spoken about this, but of corruption and racism, and this corrupt model of effectively emotional sterilisation of children, ramming them in through the system via long-term care orders and trading them away to private equity-owned institutions, agencies, and so on. So all of a sudden, the timing starts to look very, very weird, because remember this spray painting nonsense. Someone spray paints a car once, someone spray paints a car twice. I think so. When they put these allegations to me, it was like 9 and 10 months between respective acts of vandalism. That's a long time, isn't it? If you generally believe me. So I'd panicked them into moving effectively. And I do believe this coercion, as I've always said, and there has been evidence of it in the threats I've received from the local authority, alluding to both investigations, which both lead into the financial system. That I believe it's all coordinated, and the timing looks very, very much into that. Now, yeah, I like listening to different commentators and so on and so forth. And I do listen to Rupert Lowe at times. And you don't have to agree with everything he does. And he's made a lot of noise about mass deportations and so on. And I can understand his frustration with um, migration and mishandling of it. I think that's quite understandable. I'm not making any allegations here, but my only concern, and it doesn't relate to him really, is whether the discourse associated with this debate um, could lead to decent people being treated very badly. And I don't claim that's his intention. So that's why I've always been a little bit wary of it. But other things he's done really, really well is looking at the state. And I absolutely agree with him when he says the state has become malign, parasitic, and quite evil. I don't suggest British people are evil. Yeah, that's not my suggestion. But I believe the state and its apparatus has become evil. And I believe that's why I'm in the position I'm in. And I know they want to harm me in the way that I've described. But it's something that has to be challenged. And I have to do it. It is quite scary. And I have to say, the crisis team, I've criticised the NHS a lot, as we've all been frustrated with them. But in this respect, I have to pay some tribute to them, because as I've faced the horrors of the situation, they have provided me with a lot of support. And I guess that'll tail off, but nevertheless, they have helped me. And strangely enough, another thing is, on the other channel, I've spoken a lot about what I believe was genocide taking place in Gaza. And I've always done so with some big caveats, that I don't support Hamas, or don't support harming Israel, don't support harming Jewish people, don't support death to the IDF, and such shouts as that. But I did genuinely believe what we've seen there was the worst acts of genocide we've seen this side of the Second World War. And I don't deny the Holocaust. When I go to Krakow, we go to the Jewish town, and I always look around and glance at respective memorials and silently pay my respects. And but in Britain, sometimes by raising these issues, you can be labelled an anti-Semite, and I most certainly aren't. But it's ironically in this, because I had another source of calm and inspiration that's helped me, and that's been Franz Kafka, who's a German writing Jew from Czechoslovakia, or Prague, essentially. And his writings give me some inspiration, and so I've been helped by him posthumously. So I can't thank him, and even if he were alive, I wouldn't warrant any of his attention. But it's strange. But now what I'm going to do is move on to actually the mechanics of the case, how a case works, how it's been corrupted by this profit motive, and how I believe the UK is engaged in the mass psychological abuse of its own children. Take care, bye.